Morning all, and welcome to our very first Wednesday, Wellness Wednesday. Just going to move my phone out of the way. I was trying to record, trying to make my phone work so I could go live, and having some technical difficulties. It's our very first Wellness Wednesday, and things aren't coming together quite as easily as I thought they would. So I'm just gonna start this recording. Welcome to our very first Wellness Wednesday. Today's topic is mindful parenting, and I'm Sarah Joseph, your host, and I'm really excited to share some information about mindful parenting with you today. So let's get started. I am going to just pull up my notes so I don't forget anything, but I wanted to get started with just kind of what is mindful parenting. And I like to call it peaceful parenting. Sometimes I call it self-aware parenting. It's kind of all the same. Mindful parenting covers a pretty big umbrella of the ways that we act and respond. So it does involve the mindfulness, it does involve being self-aware and being more peaceful within yourself and externally. So let's just basically lay down the groundwork here, the foundation for what this method really is. And it's really a method that more parents are turning to reduce stress and ease hassles and make deeper connections with their children so that they can enjoy parenting more. So peaceful parenting or mindful parenting is really about becoming more conscious of the ways that we live and more conscious about our own triggers, our emotional baggage, that we bring forward from our own childhoods, and becoming more aware of our ability to calm down when our buttons are being pushed, when our children are whining and fighting and saying no, so that we can really respond instead of react. So let's face it, parenting is challenging. It's probably the most challenging work we will ever do. And when we are stressed or frustrated or overwhelmed, or we have our buttons pushed, we often react instead of responding thoughtfully. And so our children often feed off of that negative energy and mirror it back at us. And this can create a negative cycle of misbehavior, reaction, negative feelings. And so by using some simple tools that are provided to us by the mindfulness community and theories, we can kind of change our perspective and change the way that we control our own reactions, which will create less stress and help us enjoy parenting more. So what it's really about is becoming more aware, practicing mindfulness, and developing skills for reducing stress, increasing self-awareness, controlling our mood, and becoming fully present in our lives and the lives of our children. It's really about cultivating our own emotional intelligence and sense of self, so that we can become really great role models for our own children, and begin to build deeper connections with them. So, how do we use mindful parenting? How do we learn about it? It's really about utilizing the mindfulness practices. So meditation, breathing, finding our own inner calm in the chaos. And let's look at kind of the things that we need to be doing. So I've come up with my own principles of what mindful parenting really is. And it comes down to these 6 things for me, I think, that are really the foundations for effective, healthy, mindful, conscious parenting. So the first is awareness. So the first step really always is awareness. You can't really make any changes until you're aware of the things that need to change. It's impossible to be joyous if you're not aware that you're experiencing joy. Happiness is impossible if we're not aware of feeling happy. Change is impossible if we're not aware of what needs to change. So creating awareness helps us understand how we manage our own anger, frustration, and fear when we're feeling overwhelmed, strained, or at our breaking point, as well as in the ordinary moments too. So this awareness will help us find a place of inner calm, so that we can see more clearly what's really happening in the moment and how our overpowering emotions can cloud that reality. The second foundation principle is presence. And so practicing presence is just that, being present in the moment, not thinking about what your response will be, what needs to get done, not thinking about the future or the past. All of our focus is on the here and now. And as multitasking parents, this is not always the easiest thing. There are always a million things to get done, and our minds buzz with our to-do lists. The experience of gaining your full attention and presence is important for the development of our child's sense of self. It's so important for their growth. And it's really important for our growth to be able to be in the moment and to experience giving our full attention. These are the moments that we create memories and connections that greatly enrich our lives together, and our legacy. So practicing presence is about letting go of the impulse to grasp, to understand, to fixate on anything. It's about just relaxing into the moment without judging, thinking, planning, or worrying, just really being. One of my favorite quotes is by Wayne Dyer, and he says, your children will see what you're all about by what you live rather than what you say. So true. And that brings us to the third principle of mindful parenting, which is called modeling. So our children really do learn from what we do rather than what we say. They imitate who we are and how we act, but this isn't just pretend play. It's how they learn to be in the world. We show them what matters, what is important, what our values are, and how to manage stress, emotions, and conflict by the way that we move through our day. What we pause for, what we pay attention to, how we communicate and respond, they take all of that in with their very watchful eyes and mirror us, understanding that this is the way to live in the world. So as a mindful parent or a peaceful parent, we really must ask ourselves, am I worthy of my child's imitation? Ooh, that kind of stings, doesn't it? I know for me that that kind of stings. I don't always respond and I don't always act the way that I want my children to live in this world. Of course, we as parents, we all want our children to have more than we had and be better than we are. But I'm quickly learning that the only way to ensure that is to become my best self. So it's lucky that the next foundation principle is compassion. Compassion is recognizing and wanting to relieve another's pain. It's not about feeling sorry for someone or pitying them. Rather, it's about acknowledging what we all seek, that we all seek happiness and freedom from suffering. So as parents, we often find having compassion for our children quite natural, but especially when our parent children are in pain, we rush to their sides and offer them that comfort and compassion to help them feel better. But that compassionate response, we can aim to bring that to ourselves and to our relationships as well. Like I was just saying, it kind of hurts to think that I'm not worthy of my child's invitation sometimes. And so offering myself some compassion in that moment can really help me not get stuck on those feelings of not being worthy, of not being good enough, or being ashamed of my actions, or feeling guilty. Offering myself some compassion can help me focus more on just creating the awareness that how I have responded in this moment isn't necessarily how I want to respond on a daily basis, or in the future, that I'm not showing up as my best self, and how can I now change those ways so that I can show up as my best self more often. Yeah. And then the next principle or foundation is self-care. And really, we can't have compassion, we can't be present, we can't be self-aware if we're not caring for ourselves. You've heard that analogy a million times, of filling your cup first so that you can give to others. And that's exactly what self-care is about. Simply filling your own cup. So ensuring that your own needs are being met. And as parents of young children, this is often a challenge, to find the time for ourselves without feeling guilty for taking it, without feeling like there are more important things to be done. But the reality is, this is the most important work we can do for our family. We do better when we feel better. So by taking care of ourselves, we can take care of our families. And when we meet our own needs, then we're able to meet other people's needs. When our own needs remain unmet, allowing our cup to become empty, we have nothing to give. And we often become shorter, less present, less self-aware, and less compassionate with ourselves and others. And so remember that wisdom of the flight attendant and put your own mask on first. Okay, so the very last principle, foundation of mindful parenting for me is self-work. We all have emotional baggage that we bring with us into our parenting relationships and our other relationships. And the difference is that where our friends or partners would call us on our outbursts, our own children are mostly powerless in this regard. They are like little sponges, and they soak up all of the behavior we model, good and bad. And if they see us consistently displacing our feelings onto others, it is likely that they will learn that this is the way to navigate strong emotions. So it's important to do the self-work needed to ensure we are owning our own strong emotions, resolving our emotional issues, and not burdening our children with them. So I hope that helps you kind of get a grasp on what mindful parenting is and how you can practice it. I thought that it might be good today to kind of talk about that creating awareness piece, and offer some practical tools for you to start bringing more self-awareness into your parenting. So first, I want to share with you how the brain works, because I think it's really important foundation information that we understand what's going on so that we can understand why we're not being self-aware in a moment, or how we can become more self-aware in a moment. Okay, so the brain basically has two pieces of it that are really important for our conversation right now. And the first is the amygdala. The amygdala, or as I describe it in my book, The Animals in Your Brain, that's a children's book on helping kids and parents understand how the brain functions. I describe the amygdala as the guard dog of the brain. So the amygdala's job is to really take in everything that's going on around you. And so that's the sights, the smells, the sounds, and take it all in and decide if it's safe or unsafe. So now this part of our brain hasn't changed in millions of years. It's still, the DNA of this piece of our brain is still based on caveman days. And so it functions in a way that is very much problematic for us nowadays. So basically, its job is to take in everything that's going on and deciding if it's safe or unsafe. If it's safe, then it just allows that information to go up to higher parts of your brain for processing and connecting and putting it into your memory bank and to solving problems and all that stuff. If it decides that it's unsafe, then it sets off this cascade of physiological responses that include that release of cortisol, that's the stress hormone. It releases that and it sets your body to take action and basically shuts down the higher portions of your brain, because the amygdala's job is it sets you into that fight, flight, or freeze response, and that job is to act. Its purpose is to act fast without thinking. And so this was very helpful when we were in our caveman days, when we, were out hunting and gathering and we had our kids with us and maybe a predator came, like there's a cougar or something, or a mountain lion coming down, and we get wind of it, right? And then we would just jump into action and we would take action, save our child, and get away from the danger. And we wouldn't have to think about it. We would just act, instincts take over. We just do, right? And so nowadays, it can be really helpful as well. So if your child was to run into the street, you're not going to stand around thinking, well, what is the best way to stop the truck from hitting my child? No, you're just going to jump into action. You're not going to think about it. You might not even remember what happened later, right? Like after, you might be like recounting the story to your spouse, and you might not even remember how it happened or how you were able to save your child, because your brain was kind of the part of your brain that works for remembering has been hijacked. It's been like overtaken. It's just been like the the impulses have been rerouted. So that part of your brain wasn't included in the decision-making process. You just jumped into action. And so this process can be really, really helpful, and it can be really problematic because our amygdala doesn't know how to tell the difference between a real emergency and somebody pressing our buttons. So in a real emergency, it takes over. It just like, we just do. And in an instance where maybe we're just having our buttons pushed, you've just been like pushed and pushed and pushed, and then you kind of snap, it's the same reaction. You go into that fight, flight, or freeze. You just do and don't think. And so the part of your brain that is kind of being missed when you're in that fight, flight, or freeze response is called the prefrontal cortex. And it's the part of your brain that's responsible for language, reasoning, logic, problem solving, and impulse control. So you can see that without that part of your brain, it's really hard to respond thoughtfully instead of react. So what we want to do in this creating awareness part is really just becoming aware of what our triggers are that set us off into that fight or flight response, right? So creating awareness is really about what our own emotional baggage is. And that sounds kind of scary. And it can be kind of revealing. But really, it's about noticing when you're being triggered by something your child does. So often, when your child is having a meltdown, and you notice that you're starting to feel uncomfortable in yourself, right? When you notice that you go from being calm and cool and collected to snapping, that's a trigger, right? And there is a space in between that trigger and your response of snapping there's a space there. And so what we want to do is we want to grow that space so that we can choose a different response than the snapping response. But in order to figure out that space and kind of open that space up, we really need to work on recognizing what the trigger is so that we can find the space after it. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. So creating awareness is going to help us understand how we manage our own anger, frustration, and fear when we're feeling overwhelmed, when we're feeling strained, when we're feeling frustrated. And this awareness is going to help us find that place of inner calm so that we can more clearly see what's really happening in the moment. Often what's really happening in the moment has nothing to do with how uncomfortable we're feeling. So if you can imagine your child is having a meltdown and you're feeling really, really overwhelmed by it, really frustrated by it, really stressed out by it. And so the way that you're responding is really maybe more than needs, like the intensity of your response is maybe higher than it needs to be. And mainly because what's happening is we feel so uncomfortable with how we're feeling, we just want it to stop. So we're doing what we need to do in order to make the external thing stop so our internal peace can return. Yeah? Okay, so basically we have to recognize that what's happening for our child isn't actually happening for us, okay? And so what's happening for us is that their emotions or their behavior is triggering something within us that makes us feel uncomfortable. And so what are those triggers for you? Right? So in order for us to be our best parents, be present as our best selves, we have to examine our own feelings and actions and admit the truth about our own behavior. And this isn't always easy. It takes a lot of courage to look at ourselves and admit our own failings, to admit where growth is required. And the good news is that we can control our feelings and actions when we become more conscious of our triggers. Okay, so as I mentioned previously, we can regather ourselves and gain control over our emotions when we understand that our prefrontal cortex, that part of the brain that we use for critical thinking, when we recognize that that's been hijacked by our emotional state and we need to calm down before being able to respond thoughtfully. So really big emotions, such as anger, fear, frustration, are simply the guard dogs, the amygdala, responding to a perceived stressful situation and taking over our emotions. So once we understand that, we can learn to recognize that this hijacking state is happening and learn how to use more mindful awareness to get back to a calmer state, and which helps us think clearly as possible. Okay. So Goldie Hawn says, simply being in a state of awareness automatically stimulates the neurotransmitters that calm the amygdala and light up the prefrontal cortex. So cool. So I want to share with you some essential oils that can help you become more self-aware. Okay. So I'm dropping it now. So breathing is a really basic, but really foundational piece of mindful parenting. So what we're going to do today is we're going to take our copaiba and we're going to use it to take some deep breaths. Okay, so I just want you to drop 1 or 2 drops into the palms of your hand, and we're going to rub that together. And then you're just going to cup it over your nose and your mouth and take I want you to take 3 really deep, long, slow breaths. So in through your nose and out through your mouth, and just really slowly inhale that aroma, okay? I'm just going to say to myself now, I have the ability to be proactive and not just reactive. And you may want to repeat that after me. I have the ability to be proactive and not just reactive. Okay, so I chose Copaiba because it invites us to connect with our past and offers us the energy that links the experience to unveil the deeper meaning and messages showing up in our life. So it helps us become more self-aware and helps reveal some of the unresolved pain that is hidden in the recesses of our heart, our mind, and our body. And this, as I said, I really, really enjoyed reading Dan Siegel's book, Parenting from the Inside Out. It really highlights this idea that we bring with us baggage from our own childhood and our past relationships into our parenting journey, and that our children often trigger that baggage and like make it basically put it in our face, right? They're like these awesome little mindfulness Zen masters who go, hey, this isn't okay. They often trigger things to bring it to the surface, and it feels really uncomfortable for us. But when we're able to examine what's going on, we're able to heal some of that stuff and not pass it on to them. So Copaiba invites us to basically do something about the things that causes us guilt and shame or remorse, and then move on, remembering that forgiveness of the self is so necessary. So it's going to help us become more aware of our unresolved pain, and then help us do something about it, resolve it, and help us move forward without that guilt. So it's a really beautiful oil to help us with that. The other one that I really like for self-awareness is cardamom, and cardamom is the oil, I think it's called the oil of objectivity, and it really helps us keep that objectivity when we're feeling frustrated or angry, stressed out in that situation. So it's really good for diffusing anger, and it's really great for helping us with our self-control and being respectful. So respectful to ourselves and respectful to others and respectful to a situation. So it's one of the ones that I often turn to when I'm feeling like I'm maybe not being as objective as I need to be about a situation. So yeah, so bringing some self-awareness to a situation where I'm feeling really irked or maybe feeling a bit overreactive, right? When we feel that overreactivity to something and we question ourselves, like, am I putting too much into this? Does this really need me to be responding this way? Am I overreacting? Then that's a good time to pull out your cardamom and have a good smell of that, because it's going to bring you back to that objectivity point, that self-control position where you can look at the situation more objectively, and really see what's going on, right? That's that self-aware piece. How am I responding? What's happening inside of my body that's causing me to respond in this way? And is this really necessary? Do I need to be responding in this way to this situation? Or, like, what's really happening in this moment? So those are two of my favorite essential oils that I would suggest using for creating more self-awareness. Juniper berry is also another good one that helps us create self-awareness. I don't have it pulled out of my kit at the moment, but I can tell you a few things about it if I can find it here. So it just really helps us kind of pull out our fears, recognize what our fears are, and face our fears. And so I feel like a lot of parenting has to do with, a lot of overreactive parenting has to do with fear. So fear of our child being hurt, fear of judgment, fear of looking bad, fear of not teaching them what they need to know in that moment, fear of failing as a parent. And so often when we're reactive or overreactive, it's based in this fear or anxiety of not being good enough, right? Or not good enough to protect our child, not good enough to teach them what they need to know, not good enough to not be judged by others or seen as a good parent. So the juniper berry can help create self-awareness around what the fears are that may be driving your behavior. Okay, so those are my top oils, those 3 oils, the copaiba, cardamom, and juniper berry, that will help you work on your self-awareness for your mindful parenting. Now, if you're interested in learning more about mindful parenting, please reach out to me. I do have an online course that is available to you, and I can send you the link to that. And I also offer coaching, so we could do some one-on-one work together if you'd like. What else? If you're interested in learning more about essential oils or how to get your hands on essential oils, please do contact me. I am a doTERRA wellness advocate, if you don't know that, and I love using essential oils in my practice, my counseling, coaching, my parent education practices, because they do bring so much. It's like such a good practical tool, right? They help us so much with our emotions and our physical sensations and our physical health and emotional and mental well-being. So yeah, it just works. Look at this lovely light coming in right now. It's so beautiful. The sun is shining. Just take a moment to enjoy the warmth, right? This is like being in the moment. So there's kind of a lot of information today, but I hope that you found it useful and helpful. And if you have the recording, then you can go back and watch it. We're going to have these Wellness Wednesday talks every Wednesday. Please do register so that I can send you the recording and you can listen to it again. If you have any questions or concerns, you can get in contact with me at connect@sarahjoseph.ca. Have a great day, everyone.